couple weeks ago, I went on a podcast called Doomer Optimism. Honestly, I wasn't sure what kind of reaction it would get, but it definitely surprised me. Um, Most things I post that I do, that I promote, will get whatever, a certain amount of likes, a certain amount of comments. This one got like 10%, almost no likes, almost no comments, but I got floods of DMs or emails or messages about it, like way more than anything normal. And I was like, why didn't you post about it on Facebook? And like, oh, I'm afraid to talk about this publicly. I'm like, okay, I get it. Like, I get to be the asshole who says the public stuff, and then everyone else is thinking it in private, which I guess is pretty par for the course for my life. Anyway, what I wanted to do though is record a whole video. I did the podcast. Podcast is pretty good, but I wanted to do a video that really kind of explains my view right now, and where I am. Okay. So the video is called Doomer Optimism: What I See Coming and How I'm Preparing. So like I'm what I guess I call the Doomer optimist, right? So it was a Doomer optimism is a term coined by Jason Snyder and Ashley Colby. They were interacting on Twitter, and I guess you would call Doomer optimism. It's not really an ideology or an action plan. It seems like it's more of like an open source movement where you recognize and like emotionally connect with the intense problems you see coming, but you move forward as if there's still hope. And for a lot of people like that, especially me, I actually think what's at the end of the hard times is going to be an amazing golden age. But it's we're gonna have to go through a lot to get there, right? So that's basically how it breaks out. I'm a doomer because I see a lot of shit coming that's going to be really fucking hard to deal with, and I think very sad in a lot of ways. But I'm an optimist because I think we can not only get out of it, move through it, I should say, because it's something's coming. How intense it is up in the air, but it's there's no avoiding it anymore. But I think we can move through it, but also I think we can come out a better world, right? Now, everything I'm about to tell you, nothing would make me happier than if I was wrong about it, right? I hope that I hope I'm wrong, and I hope that you in a couple years you tease me about this video and say like, oh, hey Tucker, like how much of that rice that you stockpiled have you gotten through, and like how many years are you gonna have to live to eat it all? Like, listen, I'd be totally cool with that because if you get to tease me about that, then it means shit went way better than I thought it would, which is awesome. I'm on board for that, right? But I'm pretty confident, at least in my range of perceptions, and this is a video not just talking about what I see coming, but I'm going to tell you what I'm doing, what I have done, and what I'm going to continue to do. But first, what I'm going to do is I'm going to start with how I got here. Why do I believe this, right? Why? Because I kind of, Doomer optimism is like its own movement. I came to it almost totally independently. I had no idea those people existed. I just found them when I started preparing myself after I saw what I saw. And I realized, oh, they see the same thing and they have a cool name for it. So I'm going to tell you what I saw that led me here, why I have these beliefs, and then what I'm doing to prepare. All right, how I got here. So I'm not going to try and prove to you that winter is coming, right? Either you feel it or you don't. If you don't, okay, cool. I hope you're right. But what I'm going to do is just tell you how I got here. All right. So pre-COVID, so let's say February 2019, 2020 and before, I thought I knew how the world worked. I thought I was awake. I thought I was like, yeah, I get it. I don't know everything, but I kind of get the lay of the land. 18 months later, I realized very clearly that I was wrong. I was quite foolish then. Um, now, like I'll walk you through. In March, I was all for lockdowns. You can go on my Twitter timeline and look. I was like, they should shut down South by Southwest. Totally, 100%. I'll own that. It's true. I, I didn't know what this was. We didn't know what this was. I saw the videos from China, people fucking collapsing in the streets and shit, and I'm like, I bought it totally. By April, I started to smell a rat. was like, hold on a minute. If this actually was an issue, things would be playing out very differently. And like, why is everyone so coordinated? This seems, I know media. Like, I don't know shit. I'm not going to act like I'm a infectious disease expert or an epidemiologist or whatever. I'm not, but I'm a media expert. And I was like, yeah, this doesn't feel right. By May, I knew it was a psyop. I knew it was total bullshit. I was back in the gym doing Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. I was like, okay, like, yeah, of course, COVID's real. There's definitely some people for whom it's not, it's very unhealthy. Those people are old or have serious metabolic issues. Which now, 18 months later, we know, oh, for sure. IFR for people under 60 and healthy is less than the flu. I mean, that's in if you don't understand that, then you're just not paying attention. That's in peer-reviewed journals. That's settled science. No. Um, but I was like, okay, let's. This is a psyop. This is a media psyop. Then the George Floyd tape came out. I'll tell you straight up, man. I have to be honest. That was one of the sickest, saddest things I've ever seen. Like I legit. I might sound stupid, whatever. I don't care. I cried when I saw that. When I saw the tape, I watched the whole. I think it was 8 minutes and 9 minutes. I watched the whole thing, and man, the look on that cop's face and the desperation in George's voice, it still breaks my heart to think about, man. It was one of the most horrific things I've ever seen, straight up. So that very initial reaction to it, I got the explosive anger. I got, like I got it. Um, and at the beginning, I was totally on board with the concept of Black Lives Matter. And listen, if you're not, just stop for a second. Let me explain. The people who say, forget the organization, all that shit for a second. The people who say Black Lives Matter are not saying other lives don't matter. What they mean is that in their experience in America, they have felt that Black lives mattered less than other lives, right? You may disagree, cool, but unless you have lived through the shit that they've lived through, it's bullshit to negate their own experience about what they feel about their lives, right? So I got it, man. I was like, yeah, fuck yeah. Um, but uh, then I was like, hold on a minute. Like the Black Lives Matter organization, now everyone knows. Our fucking it's a con job run by who knows, but like Marxist, actual fucking, destroy the West, horrific Marxists, right? And all that stuff played out. And then once all this started spreading, it became really clear that a lot of these protests were not protests. These were planned riots led by groups like Antifa. And I saw that the fix was in, right? Uh, and that was actually when my Green Beret buddies started raising the flag, right? They saw the playbook, at least in my world, they saw the playbook before anyone else. So I have a lot of friends who they hate it when I call them Green Berets because they're like, I'm not a fucking hat. I'm like, dude, that's what everyone else knows you as. But they're U.S. military special forces, right? Which is different from SEALs. They're all badasses, but SEALs are the Navy badasses, and there's like Marine special forces, and then there's, I don't know, the Air Force special forces, which, I don't know, whatever. The guys who can swim forever and all that shit. And then there's Rangers who are like kind of the shock troops. The Green Berets are the ones, their jobs are to go into other countries and either start revolutions. No, sorry, I'm out back with all my dogs in my ranch and one of them's digging for armadillos, which is always a disaster. But their job are to start revolutions or to end them. Right. And part of that is, not just training partisans and revolutionaries, but, running psychological psyops, right? Like that's what they've been doing since Kennedy started them in the 60s. So for the last several decades, this is what they do. And several of them independently were like, dude, our playbook for other countries is being run in our country right now. And I was like, and I'm like smart, I know media. I'm like, hold on. And they walked me through it. And I was like, fuck. Like one of them wrote a whole grid spreadsheet that's fucking amazing and walked me. And I was like, oh my God. And like even that's why I was like, I thought I understood how the world worked. And then like dudes who run revolutions, that's their job. Walk me through how someone is running that playbook, at least in some parts of the country in some ways. And I was like, holy shit, man. That's when I started thinking about prepping, right? And the way I was thinking about prepping was the way I think, remember like 10 years ago, 20 years ago, like prepping was like a big thing. And people were like, oh yeah, like everything, we gotta go live off grid. I kind of thought about prepping the same way. This is about July of last year. And so my wife and I had always wanted a mountain house anyway. So we went to Tennessee, drove around, found this amazing place. And like, yeah, it's like it'd be a cool vacation place for us, summer place, but also we were looking at it like a bug out place, right? And we were thinking about prepping the way that a lot of people think about it. Stock up, all that kind of stuff. Now, later on, I've come to realize I was thinking about prepping totally wrong. I'm going to explain more about that later, but that's my mindset July of last year, July, August, September. Then the vaccine, then the election, right? Which like we don't need to recap. Um, then the vaccine came out, right? And if it wasn't clear that this wasn't about public health pre-vaccine, now I think it's real clear to everyone who's willing to open their fucking eyes that, like, yeah, of course COVID's real. Look, shit, the vaccine might actually be helpful. Probably not, because obviously you can get it with the vaccine and transmit it with the vaccine, which we were sold that wasn't true, and obviously now it is. But this isn't about public health. And it's so funny to watch like people who like are smart but not awake and be like, I don't understand. This is you should be doing this. Why aren't you doing this? And I'm like, have you not realized yet it's not about public health? Like, how much more evidence do you actually need? So I think at this point, I'm recording this in November of 2021. Most people who have a brain or are willing to wake up are like at least a little bit like, hold on, something's wrong. So then January 6th happened, right? Now that that was the moment for me where I really woke the fuck up. Now I'll tell you right now, if you're thinking I woke up because that was an insurrection, then you probably aren't very smart and your opinions are not yours. They're the ones assigned to you by the screen. Because there's nothing about that drunken revelry that was an insurrection. Like that's so preposterous that it's a laughable idea. Now don't get me wrong. Were the people actually really that's you could call that a protest. I would actually push that a little bit towards riot. Like if you want to call what happened in the summer of 2020 a riot, I'm fair calling January 6th a riot too. Um, was it a bunch of fucking idiots doing stupid shit? Absolutely. Should they have been there? Fuck no. Was that an insurrection? If that was an insurrection, then I'm fucking LeBron James. Either I am LeBron James or I'm fucking LeBron James. Neither of which are true. But they're both as realistic as that being an insurrection. And but that's why immediately, as soon as it happened, and all of a certain type of person start calling it insurrection, I'm like, okay. And I actually, no joke. I, looking back now, I'm hesitating because like the immediate word comes to mind doesn't make me look very good. I had I didn't have a breakdown, but I had a crisis. Truly, like I really, it was rough for me, and not because of those fucking dumbasses at the Capitol or the reaction. Oh, by the way, if you think it was an insurrection, just go watch the video where there's cops letting them in and stuff. I'm not saying this was planned. I don't fucking know. Who fucking knows, man? There were clearly a lot of different groups doing different things there. But my reaction to is the immediate media framing. That's where I was like, oh, fuck. Okay. That was the moment that I realized the American empire has fallen, that it was over. And now, and now it was just a matter of time before, sorry, my dogs are being, um, it was just a matter of time before, actually, I realized two things. So let me explain something. The American Republic, America was never designed as a democracy. You've been sold that it's not true. Just literally go read any of the founding documents. America was designed to be a republic, a representative republic. Oh, it's about the same thing. It's not remotely the same thing. A democracy means people vote and their votes count and matter and determine what happens. A representative republic is where people vote to elect leaders who then decide what happens. Both can work. I'm not like, I'm not arguing which is better or worse. Our founders, go read the goddamn Constitution. It's a representative republic, right? Like, it's very clearly a representative republic. Our republic has fallen. I have no idea when, but the idea that we actually elect our leaders who go there in good faith to do the things that people elect them to do has not been true for a long time. I don't think I'd really fully accepted that to myself, but so I guess all at once I knew the American Republic had fallen, and when I don't know, it died in darkness at some point. You make your arguments when. Who fucking knows? I don't know. But 'cause look, please don't argue with me. Obviously, you can argue all you want, but I don't care. It's clear to me that the American democratic political process is a charade that is just the modern version of bread and circuses used to entertain and distract us from what's really going on. I don't know what's really going on or who's doing it. And I don't think it actually matters. I'll talk about that why in a second. Anyway, so I realized all at once the republic had fallen a long time ago to get to this point, and this really probably means the empire has fallen. Although if the Afghanistan debacle, the withdrawal didn't convince you the empire has fallen, you're not paying attention. So that was January 6th. And I grieved for a while, like 3 days. I was like snippy. I was a dickhead to my wife and kids, and then I realized, oh, I was grieving for America. Because at that point, January 5th, I still thought America as a concept and America as a reality still kind of existed on January 6th. By January 7th, I realized it wasn't true. And I was like, fuck, man. And that was when the emotional reality of what's coming hit me. And I realized that we had been fighting a war for America for quite a while, and that the first couple engagements, the people who hated and were against America had won. And that's when I realized too, this was not going to be a shooting war. This was going to be a mimetic war, meaning a war for the mind, a war of ideas for the mind. And they were way the fuck ahead. And it was depressing, straight up. Like I was not, like, I'm not going to pretend like it wasn't anything other than depressing. So that was January 6th. Then January 20th, like 2 weeks later, I did my first ayahuasca session, right? I'm not going to talk about it here that much, but if you want to, I'm about to release a beginner's guide to psychedelic medicine. I've been doing psychedelic medicine for about 3 years, with guides and everything. And it's been totally life-changing for me. Most important thing I've ever done. Anyway, so ayahuasca for the first time, I drank for 3 nights in a row. And one of my intentions was to heal my trauma. And the second was to understand what my path or my purpose was moving forward. And I saw a lot of what was coming. At least I think I saw a lot of what was coming. You never know with this stuff, but it could have all just been made up. Who knows? But it was sobering, right? And so I went home and I told my wife that we'd always been talking about we want to get land, we want to, be on acreage like we are now. Sitting in the middle of my ranch right now with some of my dogs and cows over there and all that. I'm like, we've been talking about this. Why are we still talking about it? Let's go do it. And she's like, okay, I'm in. Let's go. So we sold our house to a California doctor because I live in Austin, and everyone sold their houses to Californians in Austin. And bought this, and now here I am. Right. So then I really started studying. I did not spend a lot of people right now who are vocal about this and talking about it are talking about what's coming, who's doing it, all the what used to be called conspiracy theories that were now like shit. There might be truth to that, right? Like Alex Jones is a kook, then and now. But like, broken clocks are right twice a day, and it turns out that motherfucker was right about at least a few things. He might still be a kook. Like all the arguments, you can be a kook and still be right about a few things, right? Um, anyway, so I started. I didn't study him because, come on, if I'm going to study from stuff, I'm going to study from people who are less difficult to get through their nonsense. I don't really care who's doing it. I don't care what's happening. The only thing I know is it's not one group of people. There's elites compete. China has a very different agenda than Russia, and they both have very different agenda than American elites who have very different agendas than the World Economic Forum or whoever else you want to see are the bad guys or the good guys. There's a lot of different things going on and a lot of agendas. I don't know what's coming. I don't know who's doing it. I don't know what their agendas are. Honestly, I don't fucking care. Yeah, it matters. And I want to know. But right now, there's so much bullshit going on. It's so hard to figure out the truth. It's not the priority. All of this will come to light eventually. We'll fig the, the Buddhists say there are three things you cannot hide: the sun, the moon, and the truth. You can hide it for a while, but not forever. It's going to come. I'm not worried about figuring it out now ahead of time. The priority for me now is getting ready so that me and my family and my community and hopefully my state and my nation and my world can make it through the doom to come out the other side to the optimism. All right. So that's what I'm going to talk about next. The problems I see coming, the general problems, because who knows specifics, and the timeline. All right. This is part three, the general problems I see coming and the timeline I think they're going to happen in. Now, please understand, no one has any fucking idea what's coming. Even if even if you believe that there's a group or a set of groups planning a lot of this behind the scenes, which almost certainly has to be true. I mean, I'll give you a really good example. It cannot be a coincidence that every major politician started using the phrase build back better simultaneously. I mean, come on. Like, I'm not stupid. And so like some group set that up or some person or who knows? I don't know who it is. Could it be the Klaus Schwab at the World Economic Forum? Sure. Could that just be a front to distract people from who's really setting the agenda? Of course. I have no fucking idea. And also, everything I tell you, I'm about to tell you, these are my guesses based on how I see and understand the world, and that's it, right? All right. So the next 3 to 12 months, I'm I'm not just confident about this. This is already happening. You're going to see a lot of inflation. Not hyperinflation. I'll talk about that in a minute. You're going to see runaway asset inflation. Or you're going to see, excuse me, asset inflation, increasing prices, right? If you have a brain at all and any eyes at all, you've already seen this. Because the US government has just printed, I forget the stat, but it's something like 40% of all the currency the US government has ever printed has been printed in the last 18 months or something. They just passed another multi-trillion dollar stimulus bill. They're going to essentially spend their way to absolute bankruptcy. It's fine, whatever. Point is, there's now a lot more money chasing the same amount of goods, maybe less because of supply chain issues. So prices are going up. I'm not going to tell any of you what to do. I'm just going to tell you what I did. I have spent, God, a lot, a lot of money over the last 6 months, especially, and I'm gonna everything I think I'm gonna need for the next 5 years, at least, I'm gonna buy now. Cars, property, tools, everything. If it is a hard asset, food that can last, right? I'm not gonna buy blueberries. That's not gonna do me any fucking good. But honey never goes bad, or rice, or things like that. I'm buying all of it that I need. So next, products. If you don't know about supply chain issues, then you just haven't been in a grocery store, right? The best stores are missing all kinds of stuff. There's massive supply chain issues. The best part is no one can agree why. It doesn't matter. That's coming. We've already seen it. You saw it during COVID. You're going to see more. Um, I think there's a deep feeling of unease. I think it's increasing and spreading. things are going to get worse, I think, unfortunately. There's a lot of canary in the coal mine moments, things where you're like, wait a minute, that's never happened in my lifetime. Whether it's infrastructure breaking, supply chain breaks, stores being out of certain staples that they just shouldn't be out of. A lot of those types of moments are coming, a lot more. Um, Honestly, I think we're in the period right now where a lot of people are going to look back and say, why didn't they do anything? How did they not see this coming? And the reason is because we just went through 18 months of, I think, the pre-show. We had riots, violence in the streets, massive supply chain interruptions, attempted lockdowns, and actual lockdowns, rolling out social control. It's like all of that was like it feels like a test for the horrible shit that's coming, right? And I think with the benefit of hindsight, people are going to be like, why didn't they know, right? So I also think, I say 3 to 12 months. It is November right now, 2021. I think the midterm election is going to be the turning point where things really start to ratchet up. The next major phase begins right before or right after. I have no idea if what happens in the midterm elections is going to drastically impact that, but that's I think a turning point. All right, then next phase will be 1 to 4 years. I think you're going to see major supply chain disruption. I think we're going to see incredible political chaos, especially in places where you're not used to it, like America. Intense social upheaval. We're going to see economic and currency authoritarianism. Like you've already seen this, right? It seems like to me the most logical. What's part of what's trying to happen? What looks like it's happening is that people in charge are trying to roll out the Chinese social credit system. The reason is because it gives them the feeling of absolute control over stuff, and so they can essentially roll out true authoritarianism, right? Now, there's ways around it, like there is in China, et cetera, but that almost seems like it's coming. Again, not hyperinflation. I think that hyperinflation usually only comes with a loss of legitimacy for government, right? We're not going to hit that stage. The American government and the American dollar is just too powerful for now. I actually think we might see in the next 4 years a real pandemic rollout, right? I hope I'm wrong about this. I'll tell you why I'm thinking this is because you hear that fucking idiot asshole Bill Gates start now is chirping about smallpox. And it's like smallpox was eradicated decades ago. It's only in two freezers. Like, who's going to take that out and create bioterrorism? Man, that last time smallpox rolled across the world, a lot of people died. Like a huge amount of people died. And so I would be extremely worried about that. That is a thing that I could see. Now, also, that's the doomer part. The optimism, I think the next great awakening is going to really start to hit. I think a lot of parallel systems are going to start being built, meaning like the US university system is overtaken by the woke. It's done. The US healthcare system, all these broken, corrupt, corroded systems they're not going to be reformed. Other people are going to build new systems, better systems, and you're going to start to see the beginnings of those, right? We're going to start reshoring a lot of manufacturing. A lot of people are going to start growing their own food, becoming self-resilient, waking the fuck up, and that's awesome. So it's not all bad news. Like this is amazing stuff. Um, that's the next 1 to 4 years. 4 to 8. I think we're probably going to hit the bottom sometime in that period. I don't know what the bottom means. It might be a week of horrible shit. It might be 6 months of a truly broken supply chain. I have no idea. I think we're going to see hyperinflation towards the end of 8 years because by then the world will realize, oh, the U.S. government is going to default on its debt, and that they're not going to believe the U.S. government anymore. That's when you see hyperinflation. That's the only time you see hyperinflation. We're going to see probably some form of central government collapse and hollowing out. Not a true collapse, but like sort of like what Mexico is now. right? Mexico is a hollowed out narco state. There are entire regions of that country that are run by cartels, and I mean fully run by cartels. The military doesn't even go in them. I don't think we're going to be overtaken by drug lords, but I just mean like America is going to break up in some sense. I don't think we're going to see secessions from the Union, but you will see an ineffective central government that is playing a role, mostly playing a role. You saw this at the end. Most empires, you see this at the end of the Roman Empire. By the end, there was just a bunch of idiots playing dress up who had no real power in Ravenna, where the end of the Roman Empire was, the capital was. Then it broke up into smaller city states and regional states. Something like that's probably going to happen, maybe after 8 years here, but we're going to start to see the spread and scale of parallel systems, and we're going to see the real death of the old age, I think, towards the end of 8 years. 8 to 12, I think we start coming out of the darkness, beginning of a new age. I think the world financial capital is going to shift from New York to Beijing. China's going to have to go through hell to get there, but I have a feeling it's going there. But it's not going to be the China you understand now. I think they're going to go through the same thing we're going through here. They're just in a different phase, a different cycle. Um, I have a feeling freedom's coming to China. It's going to get shitty, but I have a feeling in 10, 12 years, they're going to be in a better spot as a country in certain ways than we are. But I think America is going to actually be in a great spot, even though America, I think, is a true united country that we've all grown up in. I don't think will exist anymore. That's what's coming. That's what I see coming. Again, I could be wrong. And I was as vague as possible because who fucking knows, man? I have no idea. But that's just my general vision.
So here's what it boils down to. The best case scenario for what I see coming is what we just saw for the last 18 months. Basically the same stuff, but a lot more of it for a lot longer, right? Just, supply chain interruptions, lockdowns, like the same basic game plan. I don't think that's likely. That's the best case scenario. The worst case scenario is like the real worst case scenario is Mad Max, like breakdown, apocalyptic type end of civilization. I don't think that's likely either. It's going to be something in the middle, right? And who knows what it's going to be. None of us have any idea, like how to figure that out. Look at this guy. What are you doing here? You trying to get in the video? Yes, I know. So, but regardless of what plays out, I think if it's anything in between those two, I think there's a way to prepare. And so that's what the next video is going to be about. My mindset, first my mindset for preparation, and then the hierarchy of preparation and the plan. Those are the next two videos.
All right, so this is part 4 of this video series, my mindset, my preparation mindset. So a lot of people, when they kind of figure this out, their first instinct is to fight. There are a lot of people fighting now, whether it's the woke idiots or whatever, like the COVID Karens, or they fight against those people, right? Look, fighting's important, but ultimately it's not going to stop what's coming. We're past the point of stopping it. Now the only question is how do we get ready for it and how do we survive it, right? I think we're facing a systemic shift of our civilization, and that can't be fought. It can only be dampened and then accelerated once we're through the bad parts, right? Now, don't get me wrong, I'm 100% backing the people who are fighting the woke and the authoritarians, because throwing sand in their gears will absolutely help the collapse be far less bad, right? People like James Lindsay and Chris Rufo and Veritas Project, for all their flaws, and like we all have flaws, right? Those people are doing amazing work, and it is a thankless job, and I think they're going to be seen as heroes in a decade or less. And there's many, many more. I didn't just mean to name the only ones. That's not the approach I'm going to take. I think the only way for that's fighting what's called in strategy a rearguard action. Rearguard actions are important, but I like to look forward and I like to build forward and move forward. Now, sadly, we're not really going to be able to build a great world, I think, until this phase is played out. But so that's why I want to talk about mindset, right? I'm going to tell you the mindset shifts I had to have in order to be ready. First mindset shift was I had to accept that this is possible, right? Like I kind of talked about this, how I went from, how I kind of made all these realizations, but I had a very slow and gradual acceptance of this reality. But once it hit, it was like whoop, right? And it was rough, man. Like when you really accept that this is possible and some aspect of this is going to happen, it's tough. I'm not going to pretend like it's not tough. It is tough, right? So it's okay to accept that this is rough, right? But until you accept that this can happen, and it's probably some version of this is going to happen, it's tough to really kind of get your shit together. Second mindset shift, number two. This one I've always gotten well, I've gotten good, but even I had to dig in a little on this. The second mindset shift was realizing that no one's coming to save me, that my survival's up to me, right? And I've always been a big believer of that. It's one of the benefits of having kind of shitty parents is that I had to learn real early that the adults aren't in charge, they don't know shit, and they're not coming to save me, right? And it's like on one hand, it's like kind of sad. It's like that was your childhood. I'm like, yeah, kind of. But on the other hand, it's like, all right, I'm ready now. I'm ready for a world where I got to take a lot of agency, and I gotta get moving, right? Um, uh, yeah. All right. So the third mindset shift is I had to realize I don't have a lot of time, right? But I can actually do a lot in a short amount of time if I put my mind to it. So like when I first really kind of turned the corner, like January 6th is when I realized this was coming. And then it wasn't actually till I got on my land here about whatever it was, month, 2 months ago, that I realized, oh fuck, I was nowhere near as prepared. Once I really started laying out a logistical plan, I'm like, I'm behind. I kind of had a little panic. Like you actually just heard it in my voice. Right? I did. I had a little panic moment. And one of my buddies, who I'll talk about later, Tim Larkin, who's kind of deep in this world, was actually in town then. And like it was kind of funny to like talk to him about it because he's like so dialed in and helps people kind of through this and stuff. And anyway, so but now I'm like I got my shit together. I'm feeling good. Um, but I think if you're watching this now, it's November. You got at least a year left until midterms. Now prices are going up. It's people more as more people figure this out. Wait lists for those things that there are never going to be enough of are going up, like generators, solar arrays, guns, like certain types of guns, etc. So understand, like, you don't have a lot of time, but you can do a lot if you actually decide to. Fourth mindset shift I had to have is you're not going to survive this alone. You must have a tribe. And I cannot tell you that was one of the hard. It was actually an easy shift to make once I thought about it, but like we're so used to in our the civilization and the society that we grew up in having so much stuff and services there that we think we can do shit alone. That's an illusion. That's bullshit. I'm gonna talk about this why in a second. But one of the first things everyone who knows how to prepare told me is you're not doing this alone. There's no Rambo one man defends the farm, saves the world scenario. You need a fucking team. You need a tribe. Everyone does. Those are the four major mindset shifts. Now, let me talk about why most preppers get it wrong. This is super important. The conventional old school approach to prepping is to hoard stuff, right? Like I'm going to buy a bunch of dried food and toilet paper and gold and ammo. Look, there's nothing wrong with that. I have a lot of supplies too. But if that's your only approach, all you've done is one, make yourself a target, and then two, do the hard work for a gang of men with guns who come to take your shit. Right? That's not going to work. Just the hoarding approach, right? The other approach, and sometimes these are combined, is hoarding plus some sort of weird hybrid mashup of living off the land or bug out bags, hiding somewhere. That's not going to work. I don't think there's anywhere to go for what's coming. What I always tell people is there are no more safe places. There are only safe people. I'll give you a really good example. One of my good friends Actually, let me. This other guy I know, he has a lot of money. He's like one of those dudes who was in Bitcoin. Stop that. Who was in Bitcoin early and like has more money than God now, and bought like a compound in Mexico, a compound in El Salvador. He has some other random place he won't even tell me about. And he's like, no, I'll be fine. I'm like, you sure? He's like, yeah, 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 of course. Like, I'm like, okay. So what happens when the American system breaks enough that the American military is completely focused at home? They withdraw, and all of a sudden, the illusion of a state breaks up as well in Mexico and drops. And now, like the local federales decides, the head of the local federales in wherever your place is in Mexico decides he wants your place. He's not going to take from a Mexican, but some stupid fucking gringo. What's going to stop him? And he's like, well, I mean, it's Mexico. I could just bribe him. I'm like, what do you have that he needs other than your estate? And he's like, oh, fuck. Yeah. Right. And I'm like, well, same thing's true for El Salvador. Same thing. I'm like, there's nowhere to hide, man. Now, don't get me wrong. Could you bribe him? Sure. Like, but unless you're one of those people who can get people out of third world jails, and I know those people, and those people are badass, and they're probably going to do great in what's coming. Unless you're one of those people, every decision you're probably making is ensconced in the assumption of American power being able to project across the world and other people respecting that and rule of law. What happens when that breaks down? Even a little bit. Okay. So I don't think any of the old school prepping approaches work, right? I'll tell you too, the other thing to really think about, and this was something that was hammered into me. The two groups of people that I went and talked to learn how to prepare, because most of the prepper people online, like all the blogs, most of them are absolute hot fucking garbage. They don't know fuck about shit. And I'll tell you why. Because no one in America has ever lived through what's happening. What's going to happen? No one. There has never been any sort of real breakdown in America, at least not in living memory of anyone who's alive, or really even probably anyone whose grandparents have been through it. Like we don't know what it's like when the cops don't show up anymore. We don't know what it's like when there's no more gas, and not for a week. There's just no more gas. We don't know what it's like when all of this people are like, oh, I just went through a lockdown. Motherfucker, in America, the lockdowns were poor people bringing shit to rich people. That ain't a fucking lockdown, right? If smallpox breaks out and there's an actual lockdown, no one's bringing you shit. So what then, right? The reality is we have been wrapped in a historically unique cocoon of safety and abundance for 70 plus years, probably longer, and that is cracked. And it is going to continue cracking and it may shatter, right? And the two groups of people I know in the world who have dealt with this, U.S. Special Forces, Green Berets, and people in, I got a friend who is Chechen who walked me through this, like Chechnya. If you don't know your history, go read up on Chechnya and the Chechen secession from Russia. Another one who is Croatian, right? I got a Croatian friend and a Serb friend, and who were there in the 90s when it was real societal Mad Max breakdown. So the way they talk about this shit, and there's a guy online, I can't remember his name, who writes about this. I think he might be Bosnian or he might be Serbian or Croatian, I forget. But like he writes about it too. I didn't like the way he wrote about it as much. My friends explained it a lot better because I could ask him questions. But he says a lot of the same stuff. The reality is, I'm going to talk about this, but here's why you can't run. There's nowhere to run. I think what's coming is going to be worldwide. There aren't going to be safe places, only safe people. Community is going to be key, right? And I don't think you're going to be able to buy your way out of this. If you're preparing now and you have a lot of money and you get a lot of land and you put people on that land who are going to fight with you and grow with you, that's the only way to buy your way out. But your money is useless without men and women who can stand a fucking post and use a rifle or who can repair shit, or who can grow shit, who can think about shit. Without that, your money's useless. And I don't think money's going to be able to buy that at some point in the next decade. So anyway, so after talking to the people who've been through it, right? The my Chechen friend, my Serbian friend and Croatian friend, and so like a lot, I got a lot of Green Beret friends for whatever reason. It's funny. Some of them are stupid and don't see this at all, but it's only like one or two. Almost all, like 90% of them are all like, they all say the same shit. And these aren't all dudes. Some of them know each other, but not all of them know each other. It's a big community. What do they recommend, right? What's the mindset? Well, the best approach, I'm going to say this again, and I'm going to say it a lot more. They think in terms of community and logistics, right? Which are two things most people ignore. One of them quoted me like the sort of famous Napoleon line. I'm going to botch it, but amateurs talk about tactics, rank amateurs talk about strategy, professionals talk about logistics and community, or logistics. I think because he was talking about army. I found that to be extremely true. What's up, buddy? I found that to be extremely true, right? We're going to talk about dogs later, too, when I get into preparation. That's a big ass dog, won't you? Yes. Um, okay, that's enough. So logistics are how can I be sure I have what I need when I need it? Community is how can I have people around me that I can rely on, right? Make sense? All right. Now, my entire plan is based on those two things.
All right, so this is part 5 of this video series about Doomer Optimism. I got a different shirt on. It's the next day. I've got so many contractors out here working on stuff on the ranch, so I kind of got interrupted, which is actually, it's funny. I'm going to talk about how I see the hierarchy of preparation and the way to do it. And then I'm going to tell you like the basics of what I've done. And so I got interrupted yesterday by a bunch of dudes who came who were installing a bunch of stuff that we're having put here. So anyway, all right, so how I see the hierarchy of preparation. The first thing, a lot of people miss this, but everyone, remember, I'm not an expert in anything I'm about to tell you, except one small subcategory. I'm not the expert. What I did is I went and found the experts, the people who had really like studied this and really lived through it and had done it. And I talked to a bunch of, look at this. I talked to a bunch of them. All right, that's enough, bud. I talked to a bunch of them and really kind of got deep into how, not just what did they do, but how do they see preparation? If they know some shit's about to happen, what do they do, right? All right, so, and remember, the two main groups that I found who had the best knowledge and knew what they were talking about were either U.S. Special Forces, Green Berets, or people who had, from Europe, who had lived through societal transition collapse type scenarios. And the main two that I talked to is my Chechen friend and my Serbian and my Croatian friends, right? All right, so the first thing all of them say that most American prepping experts skip is defense. Number one is defense. My military friends use a term defense in depth, right? Which means, defense at multiple layers, right? Because like, if your only defense is a gun, that guns don't work for everything. They work for certain sets of things, right? So let me put you through where I see defense in depth and how it works. The first phase is literally your physical shape. Are you strong? Are you effective? How long can you work? A lot of people skip this over. They're like, oh, I have a gun, or I have this, or I have that. If you are not physically strong and capable of doing physical work for a sustained amount of time, then you're in real trouble. Like, I would start right away getting in shape, right? And I don't just mean like, I'm going to lose a few pounds. I mean like, how long can you work? Number one. Number two, then now once you're in a decent baseline level of shape, how good is your unarmed defense? Hand-to-hand combat, right? This is not something to overlook. It is extremely important. If you cannot handle yourself in an unarmed fight, you are at a major disadvantage. What I've been doing Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu now for, I don't know, close to a decade. I'm a brown belt under Hoyler Gracie and Paulo Brandao at Gracie Umata in Austin. It's a great place to train. Austin has actually become like the epicenter for jiu-jitsu. Like Donaher's here, Gordon Ryan, B-Team, Shanji, like a ton of amazing people. And you don't need to be at that level, but some level of hand-to-hand combat. I also do Muay Thai, striking, punches. Like Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu is great. I also like to punch. And so any decent Muay Thai, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, MMA place is a really good place to start. There are other forms of self-defense. The thing I will tell you, all my military friends tell me, Krav Maga is bullshit. I don't, if you disagree, I don't care. It doesn't matter. It's not my fight. I don't care. I haven't done enough with all the different disciplines to go into depth about them. I'm just going to tell you what the dudes who fight for their lives, for their job, tell me. They all train with me. Next, knife defense. I would absolutely, unequivocally have it, and what's called an EDC, everyday carry, is like, that's like the fancy high-speed military term, knife. I use an Emerson, what is this called? CQC 15. Almost any Emerson knife is going to be fantastic. It's because of this little thing right here. It's called the wave feature. You pull it out of your pocket, it pops out automatically. So if you're going to have like a pocket knife, yeah, you can get the wave feature on some Spydercos and some, what's the other one, Kershaw's. This is probably like a $200, $250 knife. You can find really good $40, $50, $60 knives that are really probably almost exactly the same. I'm just an obnoxious asshole who spent the extra $200 for some fancy metal or whatever. You don't need to spend a lot. The question is not how fancy is my knife. The question is, how well can I use it, right? Dude, this is an area that really shocked me. Knife defense and knife fighting. It is a weird, different art, totally different from hand-to-hand combat. Like the first time, I'll tell you exactly what happened, how I learned this. So when I did my first sheepdog course, which is, I'm going to talk about like defense stuff in courses in a second, but it's the one Tim Kennedy runs. There's lots of good ones. That's just his. He's my friend. He's a badass. He's in Austin, so it's easy for me. I did their level 1 course. And, when we did hand-to-hand, of course, I'm a fucking brown belt. There's all these, the non-trained people I'm just smoking. Most of the cops, I'm like, come on, dude. Putting them in rear naked chokes. Like, if you're not trained, you have no defense against someone who is. And then on day 2, they throw out the knives, the little plastic trainer knives, and I'm like, okay, whatever. I'm still a brown belt. I'm still a badass. And I'm not kidding. The first person I rolled with was this old lady, and I would roll with her a lot because I was almost like an instructor. So I would kind of help her go through stuff, and and we did hand to hand with a knife, and she pulls out the knife. I get a good position on her, pop. Right in my side, and I'm like, the fuck? This like 50-year-old woman just stabbed me in the liver. And not literally, it's a trainer knife, but I'm like, what? And then for the next 15 minutes, all these people whose asses I had fucking handed to them proceeded to fucking kill me again and again with these goddamn plastic knives. I'm telling you, it was breathtaking and shocking to me. And I'll tell you why. Before that, if someone had pulled a knife on me on the street, I would have been very confident in my ability to defeat them with my high level of skills at hand-to-hand combat, and I would have been wrong. I would have been fucking killed. That was a wake-up call. Now, listen, after 15, 20 minutes, I figured knife defense is not that hard intellectually. It's just something you got to train and know. And once I got the basics of knife defense plus jiu-jitsu, then I was back fucking people up, right? But if you don't train it, don't expect to be good at it, right? Next level, gun defense. What firearms do you own or have access to? How well can you use them? And how much ammo do you have for them? Are really the big questions. Do not expect that because you've been plinking with a 22 at 50 yards for half your life that you're a good shooter. I thought this too. Right? I grew up in Kentucky. Like, I had a gun when I was young, you shoot, whatever. I'm like, oh, yeah, I'm a pretty good shooter. Then went and took sheepdog course again, and I realized, oh, I'm really good standing stationary with a gun shooting in extremely low stress situations. But start moving and start getting other people firing around me and start getting people firing back. And not, I mean, they don't fire back, but just the simulation of it. And I was a dog shit shooter. It was terrible. I was like, oh man. Now you can train all that, and I'm not good. Like, no one's put me. No Navy SEALs calling me to be in his unit or some shit. But I'm good enough now where it's like, okay, in most civilian situations that I would ever face, I'm more than competent, and I'm more than safe. I know what to do, right? Next is family defense. Does your family know what to do if attacked, right? Do you know how to handle your family? Basic situation. This just happened multiple times across the country. You are driving downtown with your wife and 3 kids, and you just randomly turn onto a street to go to some restaurant, and there's a riot, a pocket of violence you had no idea about. Do you know what to do? The answer might shock you. It did me. I took a vehicle interdiction course. That also was Sheepdog. This is not an advertisement for them. There's tons of other places I'll tell you about in the resources video. That's just the place I went. And so I learned a lot about how to use vehicles and shooting from vehicles, when to get out of your vehicle, when not to, teaching your family just basic stuff. Hey, if I say X, do X, right? Again, not like we're not trying to prepare to be military. It's just, what do we do? If you don't know what to do when that situation happens, you're probably going to panic. And then when you panic, things go bad, right? Next, compound defense. I should say home defense. I live on a compound now. Most people don't. What's your level of security? Do you have animals? What are your layers of defense at your home, right? Listen, Great Pyrenees, like that one, are amazing, beautiful dogs, and so sweet, and I love them. He's not here because he's an amazing dog, although he is. He's here because he's 120 pounds, and he has been bred and trained for protection and guardian stuff, and that is a layer of defense, especially in a rural area, right? All right, so those are things to think about. Now, here's the big one. The most important thing with defense, which I did not really realize, but anyone from any area that's ever gone through what we're about to go through will tell you, and any special forces dude in any unit will tell you. None of that matters if you don't have a community, if you don't have a tribe, if you don't have a group of people with you. The American Hollywood idea of like Rambo with his fucking guns and all this cool shit defeating a whole army is absolute horseshit. That never happens. Those dudes die quick. Doesn't matter how good you are. The example one of my military friends gave me was, I'll take, like, if you can put the whole fucking Ranger regiment somewhere dug in, you give me enough bodies, I'm gonna overrun them, right? And it's not an insult against the Rangers. You want to see a great example of this? Mogadishu, right? Black Hawk Down. Those were the best trained men in the world, overrun by untrained dudes with AKs because there are just so many of them, right? So community is absolutely crucial for defense, right? Who is with you? How well do they know how to do all these things? One of the number one things my Chechen friend told me was, the only people who survived were the people who stuck together. That was a total shock to me, man. That was, which is a big part of my plan, why we're out here, why we're putting other families on our land, why we know our neighbors so well, why we are embedded in the community. I don't know, who knows what's going to happen, but I know if a horrible situation happened and things got sideways, there are, I will go to other people's aid, they will come to mine. Okay? Defense is if you don't, why is defense number one? It's real simple. If you can't defend yourself and what you have, nothing else matters. Hoard all the fucking food you want. Live in, like have unlimited water, unlimited power, and if you cannot keep it, it is not yours. That is the world we may be moving into, unfortunately. Right? All right, next. Now, everything else I'm about to tell you is involved. These things are layered together. So, like I'm about to talk about location. That has a lot to do with defense. So don't think of these as separate things. They're very intertwined. First thing is defense. Second is location, right? So in terms of preparation, where you live is abso-fucking-lutely crucial, right? Most of you probably live in a city. There is a reason I sold my house in Austin to, of course, a California doctor, because everyone moving to Austin is from California, because it's a failed state. and I moved out to the country, right? I moved out to not a big ranch in Texas. This is like a rounding error on a ranch, but it's still pretty big. It's a lot of acreage. It's not an accident, right? If you're in a city now, it doesn't mean, look, I'm not trying to be like, oh, if you can't buy a ranch, you're fucked. That's not true at all. So please don't think I'm like, oh, you can buy your way out of this. No, I would much rather, if my choice was have a bunch of money and be unprepared and stupid and have no money and know what's coming and time to prepare, I'm taking no money and time to prepare every single time. But if you're in a city, you need to really think, where can you go if the shit hits the fan? Cities are not good places to be, and when things get really bad. Now, you can be in a city for a long time, you can be very prepared in a city, and things may not reach a point where cities become unlivable, and it will depend on the city you live in, right? Like, if you live in LA or New York or Portland, I'd get the fuck out now, like, while you have time. If you live in Austin, I think probably you're going to be fine, right? It just depends. But location is beyond just where you live in your city. It is politically, where do you live? I live in Texas. I have the money and resources to live anywhere in the world, and it is not an accident I picked Texas. I think freedom is going to make it stand in Texas, in America at least, and not the only place. Like, there's a list of 10 states that are solid. Florida is great. Utah is great, especially if you're Mormon. Idaho is probably pretty good. Wyoming, Montana, New Hampshire. I think you make a good case for Tennessee. There's some other states, right? But politically, where you live in America, this has never had to be a consideration before. I think it's going to be a major one going forward. I'll tell you the two places I would literally get out as fast as I could: California and New York. Which I hope that's obvious. Illinois would be third. Oregon's probably fourth. Washington, Seattle area, Washington State's probably fifth. Yeah, Oregon and Washington are weird because Eastern Oregon, Eastern Washington are amazing places. Western Oregon, Western Washington, Portland, Seattle areas are complete disasters. I don't know how that's going to go. Then the next question: what's your social community like? Right, like just like I just said, if you live in far eastern Portland, that's basically like living in Texas, man. You're probably going to be really good to go. If you live in, right outside Portland, bad, real bad, right? So who's around you? I live in Dripping Springs, Texas. This is an area that has a lot of people who are very ready, very prepared, very awake, not woke, the opposite of woke. Awake, right? A lot of ex-military, a lot of Texans in the truest sense, for good and bad, right? I think that's a community that's going to do really well, and I plan on helping the community do as well as possible and being a big part of that. But I picked this community on purpose. There's a lot of other areas in Texas I could have lived. I'm not saying this is the best. It's just a good one, especially for me. That's a good part about having guard dogs, right? Next, for location, environmental. Now, straight up, like, if we're going to get into a situation where we have to grow a lot of food, produce a lot of stuff locally, Texas is not the best place. Like, I have a second house in Tennessee, and I mean, you can't stop stuff from growing in Tennessee. It's like, literally, I live in a temperate rainforest, and it's just like, my God, man, you have to have a bush hog to cut the front yard. Here, you got to work to grow stuff. So those things matter. I would really think about those things. We haven't had to worry about that for forever in America. You turn on the tap, water comes. You hit the switch, electricity comes. You go to the store, food's there. What happens when one, two, or all three of those things aren't true anymore? At least for an extended period of time, right? All right, now, so let's start talking about that. Once you can defend yourself and you're in a good spot for you, what's your water situation? Right? So the hierarchy of water is city water, which I actually don't have here. City water is great until it's not. Then you're really, really hurt, right? So if you're in a city, you need to come up with a water plan. Second, we have wells here, good ones, deep ones, way below the water table. The guy we bought this land from was kind of a badass, man. We paid a premium, but he really set this place up well. The other thing that we do not have yet, but is being installed, is rainwater capture. Right? There's now, if we could not find a good live water place, meaning like a creek or a river. There's a lot of other water plans. Hey, buddy. There's a lot of other water plans, but you need to have a water plan. In a city, think about like, can I fill my bathtub? Things like that, and then also purification. Right? We use Berkey water filters. They're fucking amazing. The British Empire used them to conquer the world. They're incredible, right? There's other things, but those are absolutely robust, rock solid, never fail. They're really good. Fourth, food. Notice, like, if you can't defend yourself, you got a bad location, you don't have water, food doesn't matter. Food only matters fourth. So, how well is your food storage? How much stuff do you have, both dry and freezer, right? And then, man, I could probably spend 3 hours talking about that, and I am not an expert in that, man. I may do, if this is super interesting to a bunch of people, then there you go, right? No one's sneaking up on me. If this is super interesting to a bunch of people, I might go in depth on that, but truly there are better people than I, if you want to become an expert in food storage. You can just go to the experts I listen to. Weirdly, you know who the OG food storage people are? The fucking Mormons, man. You do not mess around with the Mormons. Are ready, man. Those people are they're something else, man. And I mean that with true love and affection. One of my best friends is Mormon. Next, food production. Right, storage is great. Storage isn't going to take you real far, unless you really just want to eat dry, crappy food for months or years. God forbid. You got to worry about that's nutrition, impacted bowels, dude. That's a whole thing about with dry storage food. Man, you go deep in this rabbit hole. It's insane. You got to have a lot of stool softeners or whatever because you eat too much dry food stuff. Doesn't matter how much water you drink. You got problems getting it out. I'm not making this up. This is crazy. So part of why we bought this ranch is animals. We've got, I think you can kind of see, the sun's too bright. We have a lot of grazing land, really well done, regenerative grazing land for cows. We have cows on it. We're getting sheep. We're gonna have a 3 to 5 or something. Chickens, we'll do, I'm not sure, 20 to 30 probably at least. We're gonna have bees, things like that. It's really easy. We're gonna be protein self-sufficient very quickly. Vegetation, growing stuff, obviously amazing. There are so many people who are total badasses in permaculture and homesteading and things like that. So many people to learn from. We do not have a system good for that yet. That's going to be the next step for us. And I'll tell you the logic for us is you can live on meat only. Maybe not ideal, but you totally can. Can't really live on vegetation only. Yeah, I know. The vegans are going to lose your shit. And cool, good for you. You live on vegetation only. I'm going to live on meat only. We'll see who does better. All right, next. Not that that's the option. You can have both. right? Energy. So part of why we picked this place is our energy company that brings energy here is hydroelectric. So far less susceptible to system shocks, right? Coal shutdowns, oil shutdowns, nuclear issues. Now, hydro's not perfect, but it's better than most. You may not have the option of picking your electrical cooperative like we do in Texas. So if you don't, you don't. Now, what else? We have propane powered generators, multiple, with propane, big fucking propane tanks sunk in. Those are backups. We also have solar backups, right? Why redundant backup systems? Because if you don't have power to run shit in the modern world, a lot of our, not all, but a lot of our food storage is in freezers, right? It's shit gets sideways, right? So we need, at a minimum, shit goes really bad. We can't get coal power. Propane generators run out. We have solar that can absolutely run and at least keep our freezers and a few other things going. Worst case scenario. I don't expect it to get to that, but now I have this sixth. Probably it really is first, but I like to kind of get people. This is one of those things where once you realize how in depth this is, next step is thinking about community, right? We picked Dripping Springs. This kind of goes with location, but it's a little different. So it's not enough. Like, it would not be enough for us to be like, okay, we picked Dripping Springs, a lot of good stuff here, and we plop down and then hunker down and don't fucking talk to anybody. Probably not going to work, right? In terms of community, remember I said we're going to have at least one, maybe other families living on the land with us, people we know, people we trust, people that, I know this might sound extreme, but it's really just honest. If shit got bad, people I trust to hold a gun and stand a post with me, right? And that is not all my friends. That is absolutely some of them, but not all of them. So that's like the first layer of community. Next layer of community are neighbors. We know them pretty well now. Not all of them, but most of them. Stop. Then like extended community, right? Hey, go tell him to stop. Extended community, right? Who is our sheriff? Like, I will tell you what, the county sheriff is one of the most powerful people in your life, whether you realize it or not, right? And so getting to know the sheriff, getting to know extended neighbors. I'm not going to go too in depth into what my community plan is for obvious reasons, right? Like, well, I'm not giving you my address and shit like that. There are better people than me for resources to tell you how to do that. Like, you can go learn from I'll put that in the resource video. How do you learn from who I learned from? I will put most of those resources in there. But the number one thing, once you have your small tribe, your immediate neighbors, your extended group, sheriff. I would get to know the sheriff and the sheriff's department. Doesn't work so well if you're in a city, right? Because city cops are different. Sheriffs, county sheriffs are a whole different thing. Okay? All right. I'll do one more video about resources. I'm not going to do that now. I'm going to do that later. What I'm going to offer now is, if you watched all the way to the end, then you probably have a lot of questions. I know I did, right? And I was lucky enough to have or find people who knew this world who could answer them for me. And I'm still like, I'm not an expert. I'm like, let's say if the experts are at scale of 1 to 10, the experts are a 9 and a 10, and let's say a total beginner is a 0 or a 1, I'm probably a 3 or 4 now, maybe a 5. Because I'm awake, I see what's coming, I'm prepared enough to have a good plan. I've got almost everything I talked about is either already in or being put in this week. And I've done a bunch of stuff I haven't talked about, mainly just because it's like, there's just so much to talk about. But like, I kind of went through the basics, right? If you have questions, just email me Tucker at tuckermax.com. Or you can hit me up on social, Twitter, Facebook, whatever, Instagram. I'm going to do a video about resources, and then I'll do a video of Q&A, right? So send me your questions. I'll put them all together, answer them all at once. The one thing I would tell you is, I talked about this in Mindset. If it's clicked for you and you get it now and you're like, oh shit, I'm not ready at all, you're probably going to go through a little panic. It's cool. Feel your panic, let it go, and then realize, okay, now it's time to act. I think you have time, right? At least, I hope you do, because I need time. You got time. Use that time smartly, use it wisely, and you can get ready. That's one. Two, this does not take a lot of money. Yes, it does take some. I'm not going to be like, oh, you can just prepare for 20 cents, just skip lattes for a week. No. But I might have to do a separate video about how do you get prepared if you don't have any money at all. Although I'm not the expert on that because I have money. So it's like, but you don't need a lot. A few $1,000s will take you a long way. So, all right. I hope this was helpful. If you got questions, hit me up, Tucker at tuckermax.com. Otherwise, thank you for watching.